I don't know how this is going to work. Is there going to be a lag? Okay, so apparently I was on preview mode and it wasn't streaming what I thought it was streaming. It was streaming on Twitch. We didn't say anything. So now it is streaming on YouTube and it should be working. I had to do a janky workaround in order to get even YouTube to work. YouTube seems to be having problems. I don't think it's a problem with StreamYard, but I did a janky workaround to get YouTube to work through StreamYard. So things might be a little janky right now, but hopefully this will actually work.
Yeah. On my end, I see the YouTube stream and there's not that much of a delay. On my end,
yeah, but it didn't have the beginning parts of the stream.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I was saying, I was going to watch this video anyway. I haven't watched it yet, and I figured I could kill two birds with one Scud missile. Oh, that was a joke. Hopefully you laughed. And watch this. If people have questions, the Middle East Institute. This is from the Middle East Institute. It's called Changing Dynamics in the Iran War. They put out quality content where people aren't saying stupid things, and they're just starting. So yeah, here we go. And please don't copyright strike me, Middle East Institute. If you see this, I am doing commentary on your video, and people who want to see your video can go watch your video themselves. Yeah.
You, Ray, as a retired Marine officer who served on a MEU. If you could, we've got the 31st MEU, I believe, has just arrived into the region. The 11th MEU, if I'm not mistaken, is on its way. I'll say Marine Expeditionary Unit before we start getting overly drowned in acronyms here. And we also have roughly 1,000 forces from the 82nd Airborne Immediate Response, reportedly now recently arrived in Kuwait. If you could just provide us a quick overview of what these units are, what they're designed to do, what are their strengths and weaknesses, and give us a bit of a baseline from which to provide some analysis here.
Sure. Thanks, Jason.
So basically what's going on is the question of how the United States, so there's a deadline that, as far as I know, no agreement has been reached, which is in like 7 hours. And so Trump is threatening, and the question is, what is he threatening? Apparently these Marine Expeditionary Units, which I know nothing about, it doesn't sound like there's even close to enough to land on Qeshm or to land certainly on mainland Iran. That doesn't seem to be that doesn't seem to be on the board from everything I'm seeing. The big questions are Abu Musa and possibly Kharg Island. So if Trump was going all the way crazy, he would go Qeshm. Qeshm has hundreds of thousands of people living on it. It is an island. It is an important island that basically controls the Strait of Hormuz. And I would be a little horrified if he tried that. And frankly, it doesn't look like he's trying that. Kharg Island is way to the north. It's not near the Strait of Hormuz. 90% of Iran's oil comes through Kharg Island. And taking that, frankly, if I were the president, I would recommend Israel physically take it, because I'll tell you one thing, I would actually threaten the Iranians with that, and send them a beeper along with that threat, because if Israel takes control of that island even for an hour, Iranians are going to feel like the entire island, all of its infrastructure, is going to be unsafe forever. And so that is a real threat that's similar to threatening to destroying Kharg Island, which is something that the United States would not do. But it would, in a sense, be like threatening to destroy it from one side. Like if Israel had control of that island even for an hour, Iranians would lose their mind, especially the Islamic regime. And so Israeli ground troops, like if I were Trump, win-win. At least threaten that Israel ground troops are going to take Kharg Island. Oh my God. I have no idea if Israel even has Marines who could take an island like that. Maybe. I mean, Israel does have a navy, but just the threat. Oh my God. But this is the type of threat that would require deep theological knowledge and cultural knowledge of Iran, which I feel too few of, certainly people in the Pentagon, have. And that's unfortunate. But anyway, that's Kharg Island, which he has threatened. The United States has bombed defensive stuff on Kharg Island. That it's a bold move. I'm not sure it's the move I would make myself, but it's the more reasonable move. I think Abu Musa and Greater and Lesser Tomb, which are two islands next to Abu Musa, we'll just call them Abu Musa. If I think the UAE wants it, and frankly, I think at the end of this war, unless Iran really capitulates, I think the only reasonable thing is to give Abu Musa to the UAE, and for the United States to basically build a base, naval base on there. And like it would be just like all of our bases in the Middle East. I mean, you may be the type of person who's like, why do we need bases in the Middle East? Well, we need bases in the Middle East because we can't allow countries like Iran to control the Strait of Hormuz, and like that's 20% of the world's oil, right? Anyway, so now I think they're talking about what the options are. I more than bombing bridges and infrastructure, I think the more realistic, actually what we're gearing up to do is to at least take Abu Musa, maybe take Kharg, and if we were absolutely insane, attack Qashm. I don't like that would be insane. I'm almost hesitant to even talk about Qashm, but when people talk about like attacking inland Iran, like that's completely off the like mainland, like taking Bandar Abbas, that's completely off the table as far as I'm concerned. That people who are talking that are talking ridiculousness. But we'll see what they say.
Appreciate being here. as you alluded to, the Marine Expeditionary Units that are coming from both Japan as well as the West Coast of the United States are what the Marine Corps offers as a crisis response force. Because they're a force in readiness, they can deploy quickly, like they've illustrated here aboard the naval shipping that is assigned to them. So each MU has several thousand Marines, and it comes with 3 ships from the Navy. Each MU is organized around a battalion landing team, which is essentially a ground combat element, and then it's got an aviation combat element. It's got its own logistics capability as well as a command element that includes a variety of functions, mostly centered around the ability to command and control and conduct.
Okay, Professor Jiang is an obvious. Unfortunately, I can't pull up YouTube comments because of this janky setup I have right now. But and I have to look at them separately. But Professor Jiang is an idiot. Listening to him is kind of like listening to who are the guys from Comedy Central, like This Week Tonight and The Daily Show type people.
Trevor Noah?
Yeah, that type of person. Except it's less entertaining, which is hard to be less entertaining. Maybe more entertaining. In any case, idiotic people to listen to. You're listening to Chinese propaganda. So the idea that a single pilot was a forward push that failed, oh, for God's sakes. Yeah, Jan God is right. Mr. Jiang just comments on what others report, as we all do.
I don't know. I don't necessarily know if Mr. Jiang is stupid as much as he is malicious, because to my understanding, he's actually from China.
Yeah, he's in China. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's actually in China. So his commentary comes through the CCP, as far as I understand it.
ISR. They got a pretty wide range of missions, but I think the important thing to talk about here is most of those missions are things like raids, or perhaps they're on the other end of the spectrum, like humanitarian assistance and disaster recovery. But as it fits into this context, what they're really designed to do is limited duration activities. Likewise, we've talked a little bit about the 82nd. That's a narrower force in terms of options that it provides to the Joint Force Commander, to the nation. But that brigade, that Ready Brigade, does give you an ability to seize, potentially, and conduct lodgement operations, although it doesn't have much sustainment. It is also very light. And so I think what I would highlight with all of this is they unequivocally provide you with options. They're illustrative of how quickly we can respond with certain forces, but really their strength is not necessarily in duration and campaigning.
Great. That's thanks you for that overview. And just to pull the thread on that a little bit, given some of their limitations in terms of their size and capabilities for longer duration options, is there any sense that you get, given your background, that these are, or there could be an element here of more posturing or trying to send a message to the Iranians that the U.S. is serious about considering this, but even if it's limited, and kind of understand how the Iranians might be looking at this without trying to get overly speculative?
Absolutely. I think some have framed it in terms of information operations. I actually like to elevate that conversation up into the international relations vernacular, where you really describe this as a costly signal. Signal is essentially that message between governments. A costly signal is one that incurs a cost by its very name. In this case, we're posing combat credible forces forward, and that does incur a cost. Not only is the cost there with what's happening in the Middle East, but those two forces would otherwise be operating in the Pacific, potentially deterring China, potentially responding to contingencies there, as well as, you have to examine, when you move these types of forces, are you imposing a cost upon yourself or almost a pressure to utilize them? Because otherwise you've spent that readiness and capability against what is just a simple dynamic between nations.
Okay, great. And now, before we transition to some of these scenarios, Ben, I'd like to bring you in here and just very quickly, when you've got now 2 MUs that will be approaching the region or in the region, the 82nd Airborne, are these units that, if called upon, are capable of acting jointly without some of the the pre-deployed training or some of the other things that you might see in a normal circumstance?
They are. I think the important thing here is to frame this as what is possible in kind of the possibility versus optimal performance. And certainly everything is possible. The Marines, 82nd Airborne, these are real military professionals. They're adaptable. They'll find a way to solve whatever problem you put in front of them. The real challenge is how many troops you actually need to accomplish the mission, and would they operate more effectively if they did have that pre-deployment workup time? The answer to that is yes. However, these are organizations that are well-versed in joint operations. They are capable of bringing in the full might of the U.S. military for anything that they do.
Okay. And speaking in general terms, when you look at these forces arriving into the region, what kind of, Ray touched on this a little bit, but what kind of options does this provide the White House in terms of how they might put them to use constructively to try to move the needle in America's favor in terms of potential negotiations?
Ray laid it out very clearly, and so that was a great setup. I think the important differentiation here is the one that he teed up, which is the difference between a crisis response capability, which both the Marines and 82nd present in their MU and the kind of forward deployed brigade or battalions, and then the capacity to actually generate forces for extended land operations. And so right now we do not have the forces deployed, or again, we are not generating the forces for extended land operations. So the kind of cards open to the president right now are limited, and it would, as Ray pointed out, and I'm sure he'll get into in a little more detail, it kind of would focus on raids, holding terrain for limited periods of time, so on. I'll let him get into that. But it's really important to think about that as a starting point when we consider larger scale and longer endurance operations.
Okay, great. So I think with that, I'd like to transition here into a handful of the scenarios. We've now for a number of weeks heard about various options that the Pentagon and or the White House may decide on how to use U.S. ground forces. And I think it'd be constructive to kind of cover, again, some of the nuances of what would be required to see a successful mission. We'll start with the highly enriched uranium scenario, which has been talked about in terms of some of the complexities, but some of the highest, certainly the highest risk, maybe the highest reward, insofar as if you were hypothetically able to secure all of the highly enriched uranium, you would achieve that more solid victory. But Ray, I'll start with you here. Before we delve into some of the manpower and capability requirements needed, can you provide some atmospherics about what would be needed to help ensure success of such a fairly audacious effort?
Sure. As I think about it, I think it's important to point out that, for the Iranians, heavily enriched uranium, is something that they would view as critical to the regime's goals. If they are in fact pursuing a nuclear weapon, which we can presume that they are, then this is a high value asset for them. And so whatever raid has to be conducted to secure that material, it may have a signature associated with it, which highlights that it's an intelligence problem first and foremost to find it, and then to create a raid force that's capable of taking down the objective and then holding it long enough to extract that material. Which is not an insignificant task. It's not one that's perhaps beyond the bounds of what we can do, but it is an exceptionally difficult one, and not one that should be understated just by the very nature of the materials that we're talking about. Requires specialized handling, technical personnel. You're going to have secure transport out of there for what is something that is not lightweight and easy to get off of it. And so that really gets you to the concern of does this expand beyond a raid, that limited objective attack with a planned withdrawal, into the potential for sustained presence risk? A longer raid incurs more and more risk. And then at the end of all this, at the strategic level, we have to point out that doesn't end the Iranian nuclear program. It just sets it back.
Okay, great. Now, Ben, turning to you, given some of those challenges Ray described, what types of ground forces and capabilities would be required to carry out such an operation, and what would be the key risks and vulnerabilities?
I am a little bit confused about this part.
Bear with me a second. I just want to roll back here. Because
I thought under the Iran nuclear deal, Iran ended their nuclear program. You're muted. I can't hear you.
I am muted. Okay. Yeah, I mean, Iran was supposed to, but part of it is that the United States did withdraw from JCPOA, which frankly I think was the right move, but the Obama stands will say that this is something that Trump created. But so Iran, we know, has enriched uranium up to 60%, which is way above civilian use. It's military grade use. And so yeah, that's 60%. I mean, we also believe that hundreds of pounds or kilos or whatever it is of 60% enriched uranium is somewhere in Iran, possibly under rubble, but quite possibly in the control of the Iranian regime. And that has been a major part of the negotiations, is either taking somehow the United States trying to get that uranium out ourselves, or getting Iran to hand it over. I don't know how feasible it is for us to try to get that uranium ourselves. I don't know if we actually know where it is. Like, that would be quite the coup if our Marines could remove that uranium without asking any Iranians. like that would be humiliating. I don't know if that's even a possibility. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm skeptical of people who claim that this is going to escalate to some sort of nuclear war, though.
Nuclear war, yeah, there's no, I mean, the Russians and the Chinese have, it's pretty clear, have been providing targeting information to Iran. But like, yeah, this is there is an element of proxy war here, but pretty much as Ukraine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't mention another thing that Ray was hinting at, which is the sunk cost fallacy, and the idea that we've already put so much into this that we have to keep going. That's a common kind of logical fallacy that leaders often fall prey to, and I think that's potentially at work here. But then there is real value in threatening the use of ground force, and you could look to Operation Allied Force in Kosovo, where that probably played a significant role. So just another background point there. In terms of the highly enriched uranium extraction process, I'm skeptical. Not because it cannot be done, it's just because it would expose our forces to extensive risk, and there are a lot of potential technical challenges that we would not foresee at the outset, and that could wind up hindering or crippling the operation down the road. For example, we just lost an MH.
So he's saying it's even possible. I am surprised that it's even possible. He's explaining why it's not a reasonable option, which, yeah.
130, right? C-130 variant, special operations C-130 variant, because apparently the nose wheel got stuck in the sand. Little things like that happen. Desert One, if you go back and look at previous raid operations, the real challenges are when you add complexity and then you don't know exactly what you're getting yourself into on the raid site. And both of those conditions obtain in this event. And I think what you're really looking at, and I think Mike Nelson spoke about this earlier today on a podcast, you're looking at an outer cordon, which is probably going to be, my guess is it would be a Ranger force, not knowing exactly, perhaps a part of the MU, and then the inner.
I mean, they're assuming that we know where this enriched uranium is. I was under the impression that there was some doubt whether or not it got buried in our strikes, or Iran was able to remove it. He seems to think that wherever it is, we know where it is. I have heard other people talking about it being ready for transport, and so possibly it was moved and we know where it is. If it was moved, if it's not under the rubble, if it was moved and we know where it is, that's the most reasonable scenario for trying to extract the uranium ourselves. But yeah.
Operational cordon. You'd also have to create some standoff with air assets. So what you're really looking at here is an operation that would probably involve, rough estimate, over 100 aircraft, probably well over 1,000 troops. And the more people you put on the ground, the higher the risk and the higher the chances are that something's going to go wrong.
Right. Ray, I'll go back to you on this scenario. You talked about some of the complexities. One of the big ones, obviously, is that we've been told, at least, that a lot of this highly enriched uranium has likely been buried into, in some cases, a mountain, or Isfahan, Natanz, some of these sites. I mean, when you add that element of it, if that is indeed the case and remains so, in terms of the mechanics of having to not only set up some of the cordon, as Ben talked about, and have sufficient forces that can are trained to go and take possession of the highly enriched uranium, some of these other factors that make it seemingly a very difficult option.
Absolutely. I think, I think most people's common framework for this, not to get into the Hollywood version of it, is the raid to kill bin Laden. Penetrating into adversarial airspace at the time, to move on to an objective area, in this case, just a house. What you just described, and I would offer up, the distances are longer, the altitude is higher, the complexity of the terrain is more challenging, and the need to stay on the objective areas is undoubtedly longer. Let's presume that we have forces that can actually operate in underground facilities, which we do, and they can get after this in some way, shape, or form. As Ben has already alluded to, the friction they're likely to.
Okay, so he's assuming that it's under rubble. I mean, under rubble that's still accessible, that's been dug out. Okay.
To encounter under the ground, and then the amount of time that it would take to extract that is not inconsiderable. And so,
unless it's been moved to other underground facilities. They're assuming things that I thought were already were difficulties. Apparently, they believe that wherever this uranium is, the United States knows where it is, and it's in somewhat of an accessible thing where we wouldn't have to actually dig it out. Part of the story a lot of people have been saying is, oh, the uranium is under rubble and Iran can't get to it. That doesn't seem to be their assumptions.
So I think when we think about this, we really have to think about how much risk are we willing to undertake as a nation to put forces in harm's way for that long, that far into Iranian territory to achieve that specific objective, at both the tactical and strategic levels.
Okay. And Ben, I don't want to ask you to get overly speculative here, but in terms of from an intelligence perspective, what level of certainty would you like to have in terms of the location, the whereabouts, and even perhaps the condition of this highly enriched uranium?
Okay, now he's talking about the certainty of the things that I was wondering about. And part of the reason I like listening to things from people who actually know what they're talking about is they're talking about real possibilities. Like, these aren't internet yahoos just speculating about bullshit.
Ahead of deciding on such an operation.
Well, all intelligence problems are inherently uncertain to some extent. You want 100%. If I were planning a raid, which is a precise operation requiring a lot of things to go right and almost nothing to go wrong. We came close to failure in Venezuela, by the way, and we can touch on that later if you like. But I want to be in the 90% range, and I don't know if we're there, obviously, and we can't speculate on that in the public domain anyway. But not effectively, at least. I think that's probably unlikely given the underground nature of the problem here, and that we do have ground penetrating radar and all sorts of things. We may have a human source or two that give us insight into what the underground facility looks like. My doubts are sharpened when we think about the damage done to that facility and what it looks like now.
Yeah. And Ray, I wanted to conclude with that in terms of just the.
Okay, so like this seems to be an assumption that it's still that the material is where it was and that the bombing didn't make it inaccessible, that it's accessible, but it's still where it was. And I guess, you could have enough information to know that it wasn't moved out. Things I don't know.
The physical nature of having to move debris in all likelihood, because we've heard from the president that we were able to maintain some level of visibility on these facilities, and he threatened that if Iran were to move on them, that he would extract certain penalties. Just removing all of the military part of it, just the excavation part of this in terms of how would that be brought in? Could it be brought in? And again, without speculating, but just is that something where you need to rely on perhaps specialized contractors or other personnel that you'd have to consider in any planning scenario to physically create an environment where that
I don't understand why we're even discussing the possibility of digging. Like, the amount of time it sounds like you would need to, like, has the IRGC been completely overwhelmed that they would not have the entire area surrounded in such a way that, listen to what they're talking about. They're talking about landing a force deep in Iran and doing construction. Like, digging out this uranium and getting it out. How anyone would guess would give a window of less than 12 hours, maybe 24 hours for an operation like that, and then to, like, hey Andrew, for an operation like that, and then like, do we really believe that the IRGC is so weakened? Not just the IRGC, actually the Artesh, because so the Artesh is the conscript military. This is a known space that Iran constructed, controlled, that was highly secure, and they know well. You're thinking about putting Marines, US Marines, into the heart of Iran in a known facility and then dig out hundreds of kilos of enriched uranium to transport it out. Like, how degraded is the IRGC that you're considering this? And if they are that degraded, it's blowing my mind, because Iran's military is not small. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of soldiers that can be thrown at this. Certainly, if you're throwing Artesh at it, and definitely you would be throwing the Basij at it. Like, it would be. It reminds me of like the zombie apocalypse things, where you're trying to like do things while there are tens and thousands of people like coming at you from at the walls. That's what this situation would be. And I don't understand why they think this is a thing we could do. If we do it, that would be insane.
I agree with you, Jacob, but then my question to you is, why are they speculating about it if they're a reliable source?
Correct. I agree with you. Yeah, that is my question. Yeah, that is my question. Like, these are not people who sit there and vaguely speculate about ridiculous things. These are people with security clearances, and they're having this discussion. Yeah. Good question. Let me look at the comments. You are very welcome for these updates. Guy and Lance, would love to have either or both of you. Hey, Yoav, ma shlomcha?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Good.
Now, what is in the news is the destruction of the railway system, which has begun. Can the area be isolated so the army cannot reach it?
I suppose. I mean, I'm not the greatest of Iranian. I mean, how much of the railway system has been, and it's not just the railway system. I mean,
well, I mean, you have to look at the geography. Maybe if you take, let's say, 5 bridges, you isolated the territory because the terrain is rugged. Maybe 5 bridges will do the job.
okay, so by the way, this is the exact location of the synagogue that was hit yesterday in Tehran. Small synagogue in northern Tehran was hit. Well, central northern Tehran. Okay. So, what are we talking about?
You don't know where it is. It might
Well,
be.
No, the idea is that we do know where it is. It's in Natanz. That is the idea.
Okay. Okay. So assuming it is indeed in Natanz, it is a question of geography. How many bridges do you need to blow to isolate Natanz?
Absolutely impossible. This is it's close enough to Tehran that, I mean, hold on, where was Natanz? Why did this move? This is Natanz, right? Let's keep it in the center. Natanz, right? Like, where are we? That's Arak. That's Najafabad. That's Karaj, right? Where there's Chalus, like.
Okay, that's zoom enough.
Yeah, like there's it's south of Qom. It's between Qom and Esfahan. Like, the idea of trying to isolate something between Qom and Esfahan, like, that's, I mean, it's kind of a bad analogy, but it's kind of like trying to cut off something that's between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Let's not say Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Let's say Jerusalem and Hebron. Like, yeah, that's not. No. Yeah, like, I mean, there are enough Basijis in Qom and Esfahan. Forget IRGC. Forget Artesh. Just having Basijis in trucks, and they will. Like, if you were to say our enriched material is under attack, you have 10 hours to come and kill Americans, you could feasibly have tens of thousands of unarmed civilians show up. Would it be dumb to show up? Yes. Would tens of thousands of unarmed civilians, and actually probably lightly armed civilians, because the Basijis are armed, right? Like, forget it. I don't even understand what they're thinking if they have to dig this out. Let's see what my YouTube comments are saying. Nothing. Okay. What about the discombobulator? if it works, honestly, if it works, if we are able to do this, it would be a bigger coup than when Bibi was able to take all of that paperwork. You remember that operation where they were able to find all of the stored paperwork and bring it to Jerusalem? Yoav, you remember that?
Yeah, of course I do.
Yeah. Like, this would be so much bigger than that. So much bigger of a coup than doing that. I don't see it.
Okay, I still haven't seen the geography, but I will say the following. You don't put a nuclear reactor in a geologically active area.
Mm-hmm.
And mountains tend to be geologically active. So I would guess, sight unseen, that it's on a plain.
No, it's in the, yeah, it's, I mean, yeah. It's definitely under some hills, if not, yeah.
Some hill, but not very rugged mountain range. Therefore, I would say that a priori it will be hard to isolate.
I mean, it's right in the middle between Qom and Esfahan, which are two very large cities. And how many miles from Qom to Esfahan? Let me ask Grok. How many miles?
But the miles don't count. I wanted to count bridges. If there aren't no great bridges on that road, then it doesn't matter how long it is.
I am not. No, there aren't like rivers.
Okay.
Yeah, especially because there would have to be one between Qom and one between Esfahan, right? So like you would have to be able to isolate it from two sides, unless if this area, right, is more remote than I imagine.
Yeah, that was exactly my question, but I can assume, for the sake of this ad hoc discussion, that it's not rugged enough.
It doesn't. Yeah.
Anyway,
No.
something that I want to say about all the options that you.
By the way,
raised
this is
earlier.
Kashan. This is where my mom's family's from. Yeah, go ahead.
All the options of taking this island or the other island.
Yeah.
There are lots of options, and maybe some of them are good options. The problem is that, military speaking, you don't execute the option that you have not practiced for a year. Any option that you're going to try that you haven't practiced for a year is going to fail. So they have to be so clever as to plan this operation a year in advance. And it just, as you say, it blows your mind if they do.
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't even this was a possibility that was opened up during the 12-day war. So it hasn't even been a year, has it?
Yeah, okay, but if immediately at the end of that war they started practicing on that option that they're going to execute now, then it's believable. But then what mortal has this hindsight?
Yeah, the more I'm looking, I mean, I'm no what you call it, but like this area is so heavily like the area around it is so heavily I mean, you're talking like apparently 50 miles from Qom, 50 miles from Kashan, 50 miles from Esfahan. You're talking 50 miles in several ways from large population centers. So 50 miles, like that's an hour's drive away, but you're on three sides. I mean, no, these are large population centers from Qom around all the way around to Esfahan, right? Like these are large places. And I mean, people were talking about Fordo and Natanz, right? And Kashan is apparently right next to it. I mean, Kashan is not a small city. How large is Kashan? Kashan is an metro area of 430,000 people. So
how sure are we that it hasn't been moved?
That's what they're speculating on this video, that it hasn't been moved. I heard other speculation that was talking about. I heard other speculation which said that it may be on trucks that were moved, and we could capture the trucks which already have the material in a movable arrangement, right? And so I heard this on the radio, and at the time it sounded kind of strange and weird to me. But if that's the case, that seems less crazy. But they're talking. I mean, in this video, they've started talking about the possibility of having to do a digging operation. Like, if you have to dig this out, as soon as the Iranians find out that this is something that is happening, there will be you would have to explode an EMP over Iran to keep people from coordinating. You could easily, I believe, have tens of thousands of lightly armed civilians show up for the national defense in Natanz and the whatever the name of the other Fordo. If you give it enough hours, if you give it 5 hours, 6 hours, easily tens of thousands, and Iran's radio and telephone and systems are working. Radio, telephone, and television systems are working. Tens of thousands of lightly armed civilians would show up to defend it, willing to die.
Okay. In a city, what percentage of the armed supporters of the regime will remain in the city and not go for the chase?
Depends on the city. You're talking about a city that, I mean, it's apparently a few hours away from Qom.
Let's say.
Qom, I would say. So Qom is a religious city. Like how we have so many yeshivas in Jerusalem, they have madrasas in Qom.
Yes, but some support the regime and some don't. Okay, and of these, some are armed and some are not. My question: of the supporters of the regime who are armed, how many will remain in the city and will not go to the chase?
It's speculation, but I would say the peer pressure, the overwhelming majority of the armed, anybody who's armed is armed because they are trusted to be a fanatic, to be one of the soccer hooligans.
So you say that the great majority of those will go to the chase.
Yeah, if they are called, I think so.
Okay, I rest my case.
What do you mean?
Don't mean, just asking.
What's your case?
Yeah, never mind.
Okay. Yeah, especially, I mean, if it wasn't, I mean, look, they must have also thought about this type of stuff when they decided that's where they're going to place the nuclear facilities,
Yeah.
right? And I cannot think of a city better to be near than Qom.
Okay.
For the regime. That is where all of their craziest so let's go back to Natanz. And there's Natanz here. So directions from Qom.
Okay.
2 hour drive.
Yeah, I will jump to another aspect of the same story.
Yeah.
What is on the headlines now is the disruption of the railroad system.
Yeah.
And what I know of the 3 years the war in Ukraine, that it cannot be done because the railway system in Ukraine is still in operation. Troops and armor is still getting to the front line regularly. Important bridges cannot be blown away. It takes maybe 10 tries to cause significant damage. Any damage to the linear system, to the track, is easily fixed within hours. In order to disrupt the railway system, you really have to hunt for all of the locomotives and all of the power sources. So what are they going? It's an open question. What are they trying to do? I mean, if they're going to disrupt the railway system, it's just for one day until the damage is repaired. What are they planning to do tomorrow that requires the railway to be disrupted? It's another hint, another piece in the jigsaw puzzle.
I would say my guess would be Khark.
Yeah, but why then? Why are they going for the railway system, or is it just a distraction?
Because unlike what we were talking about in Natanz, Khark, if it gets taken over, you need to bring machinery, you need to bring people, you need to bring if you want like that this would be a military operation. Natanz would be call out your besieges. Khark would be you need your army, you need Artesh, you need IRGC.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter what kind of army you assemble on the coastline if you're conquering an island and you have air and sea supremacy. Nobody can leave the coast. It doesn't matter.
They can bombard the island from the coast.
Oh yeah, but that they can do at the moment without the disruption of the railway system is neither here nor there towards bombarding, because you use a coastal artillery that is fixed.
I don't think they have coastal artillery. First of all, Iran has its entire coastline, Persian Gulf, to defend. If I am thinking why railroad systems other than just to cause economic pain, which frankly is a war crime, but whatever. As a military,
never mind war crime, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is if you are in some ways, because what are Qeshm Island? I don't think that's reasonable. Abu Musa is right here somewhere. There's Abu Musa and the tombs right? I think that's possible and likely. So that's one place Iran has to think the United States might land troops and do something, and the other place is Chag. And
I
defending both. Yeah.
I think.
Gilad.
Hi. Okay, overall, I mean, you get a night's sleep, you say thank you in Israel. Yesterday I was more of a zombie because I couldn't sleep at all. Could you give me a quick rundown, because I joined after being in my Arochat Chag. So, like, what have we? Where are we at? What are we saying?
Okay, so
I will summarize it. We were trying to be in the shoes of the American generals and planning the invasion to Iran, and we're thinking whether to take this island first or the other.
Not exactly the summary, but so we're watching a video from the Middle East Forum Institute, which, from what I have seen, has actually competent people talking about real things, and they are talking very realistically about what are the options that the United States has when the deadline. So we're about 6 hours away from the deadline that Trump has set. And the question is, okay, this deadline comes into effect. What is the United States doing? What is the United States threatening? And what they are talking about is extracting the 60% enriched uranium, which we know Iran has. And the fact that they're talking about it as a realistic thing is already shocking me.
It's shocking. It's shocking, but I don't know. At least in my very limited view, it's not as shocking as getting the WSO out alive after, what was it, 40 hours? Like, how long was he there?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I mean, that to me is like I have no military knowledge, but it seems to me very very hard to do. Just going into some place as massively huge as Iran, setting up these forward bases in their territory, and then extracting without human casualties. I mean, they lost some more equipment, but to me, that's pretty unbelievable. I wouldn't have thought that level of an operation would have been possible.
I agree with you. Now imagine 440 kilograms of enriched uranium. That is
why 440?
Because that's how much we know we have. That's
really?
not I just asked Grok for the exact amount. It says 440.9 milligrams of 60% enriched uranium.
Milligrams.
What?
You said milligrams or kilograms?
Kilograms.
Because now you said milligrams. Okay.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Kilograms. No, kilograms.
Okay. That's just surprising, because I remember. I mean, nuclear material is really powerful per unit of mass. So 440 kilograms is a lot.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking logistically, moving 440 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, which I guess you would need to have it at least in some sort of covering, etc. Right?
Yeah, from what I understood, like people talking about it, they were saying that there's like very few like specific special forces people that have been training to do these things, and I don't think they have enough. Like that's what what I heard from analysts, that if this is several locations and a lot of material, then it's not guaranteed that there's actually enough people, even putting aside all of the complexity of the operation. Like it might just not, like the bandwidth might not be enough.
Wait a minute. I want to completely overturn the ball. You are imagining a metal bars, like bars of gold that weigh half a ton, and maybe they are encased in some lead in order against the radiation. So it's a ton, yeah, metal. That's what you're imagining. Am I right?
I'm actually not even imagining that.
No, the uranium. You're a physicist, aren't you?
Yeah.
This uranium, in what phase and state does it exist at the moment?
I would assume it's solid, but I don't know how they store it.
Okay. I'm not a physicist. My friends are telling me that it actually exists in the form of gas.
That's what I've heard too.
Fluorine gas in special containers. And one picture and inserting of a drop of water to that gas, because it's fluoride. It's a reaction of hydrogen and fluoride is it's
Boom?
a great big boom.
Uh-huh.
So it is untransportable and easily destructible.
So you think they might destroy it?
No option makes sense. I'm just saying the idea that we had in our minds of the bank robbers opening the safe, taking out the bars and escaping with them, that's not the physics of it. That's what my physicist friends are telling me. If it is in gas, fluoride gas, in containers, no way you transport it, and no way you transport it without destroying it.
Yeah, I mean, it that would be a very large boom.
A chemical boom. I think it's one of the largest chemical booms possible, and it's going to be quite dirty, but not nuclear.
I mean, I'm just not sure. Maybe I'm doubting the wrong people, but I don't know enough about enrichment. My guess from what little I do know is that seems to me like a phase in the process of enrichment, but I don't know that that's how they would store material that was enriched. Like, I'm just saying intuitively, right? If that's how you were to store enriched uranium through any place that enriches it, we would see so many more accidents, wouldn't we? Like that seems to me like it would be in that phase briefly. I don't know. I mean, again, it's not my field in physics, but it just, like, in terms of human engineering, sounds to me so. I don't know. I would like to see some confirmation before I believe that.
Andrew, you're a chemist. What would you do?
Don't look at me. I don't know. I dropped out.
I mean, in this video, they seem to be talking extraction. And like I said, I listen to these people because they're not idiots talking about stuff they don't know what they're talking about, right? And they do seem to be talking extraction. Unless there was something you wanted specifically to talk about, Gilad or Yoav, we can listen some more to this video.
I'm just saying it cannot be in metal bars because you're getting very close to critical mass.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're going to turn it, if you're going from gas to something you want to be able to store, I would think you would stop at liquid before you would get all the way to solid. No, maybe.
Yeah, but
That depends on a lot of things. Like, I don't know if you want to keep it in something that's pressurized, whether you want to like make it carryable, whether you want to keep it at room temperature or very cooled. Like
At what temperature is uranium gaseous?
It would probably
no,
be in the
it's not
pressure
temperature,
chamber, not
it's
in
the chemistry.
I can check.
Okay.
Yeah, like if the question is like at room temperature, is it a gas? No, that's
Yeah.
But in room temperature, it is when you play with it, you join it with other stuff to make it a gas. It's not pure uranium that is the gas.
Yeah. So again, I don't want to just speak out of my ass on it. So
Yeah, I
don't know enough, but I want to see something clear before I make a judgment on that.
yeah. Okay.
That becomes an option.
Jason, I'm going to be honest. We're going beyond my skill set because what I think you actually described. I think is our
we
reality.
had one comment from a British friend who said that those speakers do not know anything about uranium. And he didn't go into more detail than that. Maybe you should go in and explain.
I mean, Guy, as much as I love you, I don't know how much you know about uranium.
Okay, so Mr. Kosenhag
Yeah.
has commented the following. First, he commented UF6 uranium hexafluoride.
Yeah.
And I also said half a ton would need 3 tons minimum of lead to protect it.
Yeah. I mean, Guy Kosnahan is here. He is. There you are.
I couldn't resist in the end.
Guy,
Yeah,
where are you getting this information about uranium?
Well, I am an engineer.
Okay.
Way back when, I was an engineer and I did chemistry and all that sort of stuff. So uranium, and lived quite close to a nuclear reactor when I was growing up. So we went down there and saw it all working. And there was a great chance we would all have had jobs if they hadn't bothered to shut it down after 30 years. But anyway, they so the hexafluoride, uranium hexafluoride is the way they carry it. You're right. It's, I believe, a gas at room temperature, but they probably pressurize it into a liquid. So like you get the oxygen cylinders, but then of course you've got to put lead lining around them. So I don't know how much lead you're going to need to go around that to make it then stable. And then of course you can't put multiple bits of them together because then you get critical mass, which might be slightly unfortunate in its effect. Well, that's basically what the nuclear bomb, isn't it? Pretty enough.
Yeah, and also if any water gets into that liquid, then it goes boom.
You don't want that. You don't want that. No.
So just in the storage itself, would it be stored with like a lead casing?
Almost certainly.
So let's say a reasonable assessment is wherever this material is stored, there would be like, I don't know, 4 tons at most, more or less, of total mass that you need to extract. Like it's not that the extractors need to bring extra shielding because it wouldn't be stored without shielding. That wouldn't make sense.
No, it wouldn't be stored without shielding. But they'd actually, again, depends on where they're storing it. I mean, if you're storing it underground and you're only visiting it once every 2 weeks, then you can afford a fairly high radiation count around it because the guys are going to go in, they're going to have little guide character things on them, and they'll come out and everyone will say, "Oh, you're not going back in there for a month," you know, by which time the half-life will burnt off. But yeah, you get radon gas off them as well. Uranium breaks down to radon gas. So one of the dangers is that you have to have a valve on there, because as the gas breaks out, you need to keep that from expanding.
Otherwise, that's a poisonous gas, right? It would suffocate.
And yeah, I mean, radon's what Marie Curie discovered, of course. That's the famous beginnings of nuclear stuff.
So can I conclude that those three gentlemen that we were watching do not have any idea what they're talking about?
I think they do, but I don't think they have any idea about the sort of the physics of the as Jacob calls it, the logistics. I mean, I remember seeing trains go past with nuclear waste on them going up to Sellafield in my youth, and you know, inside a 40-foot container would only be something like this size, because it's a very heavy, and B, you know, they need a lot of padding around them to stop it doing anything.
I mean, just imagine the aircraft you would need to lift that many tons into the air.
A Chinook could do it.
Problem.
That's not a problem.
I would assume no. But aircraft lift many tons. Like, I think just the amount of bombs on a B-2 bomber is several tons. I don't know.
Oh, right, the bombs. It's just when you were saying, you know, they got this person out, I'm thinking, okay, a person, right? As opposed to, I mean, these are going to be helicopters, not. Yeah. I mean,
I think one Chinook could do it.
Okay.
Because a Chinook can lift a small tank.
Okay.
So, or an artillery piece.
Several tons, yeah.
Yeah. Small tank is about 10 to 15 tons. So they could do it. They could lift it, but whether you'd want to use that Chinook ever again, or whether you just want to bury it in lead in the middle of the mountain somewhere, is a different matter altogether.
So, on the radio, and this was weird that it was on the radio. But it also makes it impossible for me to go back
radio station. What sort of radio station?
NPR, yeah. God, National Palestinian Radio, as we call it around here. The National Public Radio. It's the
it's the US equivalent to Radio 4.
To BBC.
Yeah, Radio 4. Yeah.
Okay. And they and the guy, he said it was being stored on trucks ready for transport. That's what he said.
Wow.
That makes very little sense to me.
Big trucks. No, not ordinary trucks. Big trucks.
Why would Iran store it on trucks?
In order to move it and get it where they want it. Yeah, because the idea and part of the story Iran claimed was when the bunker busters were sent in by the United States, that actually this material was moved to a secret location, right? And that's why there's this belief that it was there in the most secure place in all of Iran, in a transportable way that they could possibly abscond with it, but there's no place in all of Iran that was more secure than where it was. Right? So he was saying it's ready for transport on these trucks, on several trucks.
It makes sense.
Very big trucks.
I would guess so.
That you can easily distinguish between those trucks and some other innocent trucks on the road.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah,
but actually, you probably don't want them to be very distinguishable. You probably want them as Iranians just to look like any other truck.
they would want that, but part of what these gentlemen were talking about was the United States believes the material hasn't been moved because they believe they would know if it had been moved.
Someone is talking to someone.
There are definitely, yeah, and like these are the types of real conversations I wish you did hear about in popular media, but like nobody's actually talking about this type of stuff. They're talking about absolute stupidities left and right, and it bothered me so much.
Because
and
yeah.
I was just going to say, I think this is one of the problems with TikTok is I think the Chinese government is weaponizing it against the Americans.
Could be TikTok, could be the Russians as well, could be the Iranians, but for whatever reason, last night I was on a live stream and the host actually asked me on because I know something, and it was an open panel and everybody was asking me about Jewish views of hell. Yeah.
To hell with those views.
I mean,
I don't want to divert, but that sounds interesting.
So, aside from the one hypothesis of the nuclear thing, like extracting the nuclear material, which I think, even if it's transportable, that seems to me very risky, very unlikely. I mean, what my intuition is generally with threats and deadlines that Trump makes. I think Neil Ferguson said it's about 50% of the time. Like you don't know whether he follows through and how he follows through, and whether that's strategic or otherwise caused by his erratic nature, whatever it is. That's generally how I see it. And what's to stop the U.S. sort of just continuing the war and saying, as they've been saying every day, today was the most intense we've been attacking, and maybe like they can attack, I don't know, some power plants, the smaller ones, not to sort of make the dramatic apocalyptic escalation that they're selling, but to sell it as, this is our game of misdirection. Like, what's to stop that from happening?
I mean, I assign a low probability to that just because I think Trump wants to do something, and this is an opportunity that I think a lot of people don't realize. Like, the people who've been thinking about this see this as a moment of opportunity. There are things you could be doing. I think handing over Abu Musa to the EU, and I do think the United Nations Security Council has been moving in that direction. There's been one resolution already. There's another resolution that's being talked about that France sabotaged, that in essence would have allowed the UAE to take Abu Musa. I think that UAE wants Abu Musa, and frankly, if we give the UAE Abu Musa, the United States is going to build a naval base there.
I mean, I don't think it's a secret that they want them. Like, it's a conflicted territory, right? Like, it's not.
It went to, in 1980. It went to the United Nations Security Council, and the Security Council said, "We'll get back to this."
All right.
Yeah, that was 45 years ago. You're right.
Yeah, well, it's they're very busy.
But
world to run.
Honestly, the UN Security Council resolution that that Bahrain, on behalf of the GCC, was pushing, which is still being negotiated because France threatened a veto, from my reading, would have allowed the United States, Israel, and the UAE to take Abu Musa.
Why would Russia and China agree to that?
Russia and China did not veto the previous resolution. It was sponsored by 135 countries.
No, I mean, I'm not doubting it. I'm just wondering why. Like, they're clearly not interested in. I mean, they have more complex interests in the region, but I don't think they would want to hand the U.S. and Israel a win, right?
No, but the Strait of Hormuz being controlled by Iran is not good for anybody. And China gets a lot of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz, and the GCC countries, I mean Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, they're not gonna be like here. I mean, this. I don't think I have to emphasize how important the Strait of Hormuz is. Never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. You think that's why? Well, that's The Economist. Yeah, The Economist is very good at intellectually rationalizing why everything the United States is wrong. But that's beside the point. So Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and to some extent, some of it, and Iraq, and some of Saudi Arabia, all of them are not okay with Iran deciding that the Strait of Hormuz is its personal toll booth.
For sure.
And
I'm just saying, like, that's not Russia and China.
It's not Russia and China, but Russia and China would have to stand against them and the United States. And with the previous resolution, they didn't. They abstained. The vote was 13-0-2 with 2 abstentions, right? And there's too much international, like Iran attacking Turkey and UAE, and absolute, like, talk about don't interrupt your enemy while he's making a mistake. Right? That was absolutely insane. Pezeshkian tried to stop it, and the IRGC basically named Mujtaba Ayatollah in order to shut Pezeshkian down, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, what were you thinking would happen? That they would actually, like, basically black out much of Iran, destroy power?
I personally, I think realistic, actual, I don't think the United States is going to do the obvious thing. And Trump will always say, like, whatever Trump does, he tries for it not to be the obvious thing. I mean, personally, I think it would be a brilliant idea to threaten Israel taking over Kharg Island, like allowing Israeli troops to take over Kharg Island.
Okay,
because regardless of whether Israel can do it.
Okay, Jacob had a question. Gilad, can you answer? What is the size of our Marine Force?
I would sum it up as not large. Right?
Yeah.
I think we don't even have one. I mean, maybe we have one or maybe 2 MEUs, like in quantity, what the United States sends in one, like, force package. I don't think, like, Israel is not a naval power.
Okay, I'm not saying, I am saying threatening it. right? Because you just have to realize that if that infrastructure is in the hands of the Israelis for even 1 hour, Iranians will never be able to trust anything in on that island again. It will be contaminated and it will need to be destroyed by the Iranians. So threatening to take it over, right, is basically like having a Jew touch it, is basically like you're taking the temple oil and you're making it worthless.
I think you're romanticizing it, Jacob.
I think people don't understand the religious and symbolic and like the idea of Mossad like controlling Kharg Island shocks IRGC members to their very core in ways that materialists simply can't realize, and that's part of our problem.
Yeah, I mean,
and I think the difficulty is as well that actually Israel's apparat is largely humanist in that sense, and so they can't see. I mean, I've just imagined the Magen David flying over some Muslim territory for an hour or two, and the shock and horror of everyone in the Gulf that might.
Well, that's actually I would think one of the, like, if it were proposed, Saudi Arabia might be what would
happy birthday
veto it just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Which is why to me it sounds like a good threat, but only a threat.
Yeah, don't make threats you can't carry through or shouldn't carry through. It's probably a good idea.
I mean, I
think that's the difficulty. That's the difficulty that Trump has now set himself up.
I personally would
he
not
looks
mind at all
with swearing, and now he's set himself up for a failure. Whatever happens tonight will not be what he suggested.
I think handing Abu Musa over to the UAE would be plenty humiliation, because it's real. You've changed the borders of Iran. And
what do you say to the people I hear, like many, this specifically because you're from Iran, many people talk about, okay, if you talk about taking Kharg Island or Abu Musa or anything, then you've lost the Iranian street, because the Iranians, if nothing else, are patriotic, and they would not appreciate any land taken from Iran.
It is a serious. It is definitely a serious. So this is the type of thing that, like Reza Pahlavi cannot suggest. Cannot. He will be against it, and he has to say he's against it. And to a very real extent, that is a real threat. But humiliating the regime. The thing is, the reason Abu Musa is so realistic is they're basically unpopulated islands. There are a few thousand people living there. There are military installations already, right? And so will it be another humiliation in a long line of humiliations that Iran feels it has had ever since Armenia was taken away, right? Ever since it wasn't the Persian Empire and it didn't control India, yeah. And will it stick in the Persian mind, and will they be unhappy with it? Yes, they will be. But it's a humiliation. It's not a real provocation where people would be like, these are the people who have been chanting in the streets, Na Gaza, na Lebanon, Janam Fedai Iran, right? Not Gaza, not Lebanon, my life for Iran, less than Kharg and less than certainly than Qashm, right? Taking these small islands that are basically uninhabited would be a humiliation that I think people would unhappily take. But humiliating the Islamic regime is precisely what you need in order to say, we won this war. Don't bring us back, because we will humiliate you again. Right.
So how do you see this general dynamic? I mean, that at least seems to me the catch-22 of our side in this fight, which is, you know, the wet dream is, of course, a revolution-style regime change, but I think that all of the realistic ways to get there go through completely alienating the people that you would want rising up and being in your favor.
Yeah,
I mean,
yes.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying necessarily every way. I'm just saying, like, the ways that people are talking about, let's say, destroying power plants, right? I mean, it makes sense that would weaken the regime, but it makes sense that it would also really hurt the common people. And I mean, like, really hurt in terms of like nutritional security. Like, people will starve.
Right. People are probably going to Iran is going into summer with very limited amounts of water, and being under war, the internet has been down for the longest in any country has kept their country off the internet.
Except
Iran, like, this is a zombie regime, and I don't see how they're going to make it through the summer. That's why my last stream, I read that article from Karima Sajidpour, which I highly recommend to anybody who didn't listen. Like, go read that article. I think he's giving as much as someone who is a good student of history can imagine in what ways Iran is going to change. And you know, lots of things which seem like they couldn't last very long have lasted way longer than they seemed like they couldn't last.
Yeah, the Assad regime is, I think, the best example. And like, it was clear that it was done, like the civil war and the chemical weapons, and then it somehow lasted for 10 more years, approximately, I think. And then, very surprisingly, for any person that I know, it just collapsed. Yeah. Like, what was it? 5 days? I don't remember now, but it was crazy.
And part of that was the fact that Russia has been so weakened by its stupid attack on Ukraine.
Yeah.
Right?
That's also what happened in Azerbaijan and Armenia. The Russian forces there just had nothing left to do, and then Azerbaijan just took over. And
look, I mean, it's possible that's what's going to a similar. I definitely have hopes for a similar, almost miraculous change in Iran's government. If it was me, like if I were Trump, I would be behind the scenes. I would be threatening that Israel's going to get Kharg Island, and in reality, I would be planning to take Abu Musa for the UAE. That's what I would be doing, and what would happen?
This humiliation would cause what? This is what I'm trying to understand.
It would further cause the people the people who have faith in the regime to lose faith in it, and the people who are tired of the regime to be wanting a change. It would be a real humiliation that would also make it easier to keep the Strait of Hormuz open.
But I would expect like, even if that were the case, right, then the people who are tired of the regimes, like the chickens come home to roost, like after the war. They wouldn't, like, while this is happening, they wouldn't go like, what, Americans took Abu Musa? Now let's bring down the regime. That doesn't happen.
Well, correct. Yeah. So what I am saying is, okay, we give Abu Musa to the UAE, and basically we say mission accomplished, we won, and France and the other people who have agreed to secure the Strait of Hormuz when the war is done, you would have to basically have a one-sided peace where move on.
That's what I'm doubtful about. Like, I heard Michael Kaufman, who's at least in my view the most trustworthy analyst on the Russia-Ukraine war that I've encountered. He was talking about, in that war, a dynamic that people don't realize enough about wars, where he says, like, the losing side is typically the one that gets to decide when the war ends. And my intuition is, like, as long as Iran can fire a ballistic missile or a drone at any of the U.S. bases in the Gulf, then I don't see how the U.S. can say mission accomplished and leave without, dramatically having their stature hurt by that. Like, that to me is why this war seems a lot harder to end on a mission accomplished than it might seem, by the power discrepancy.
Okay, so this is why it is so incredibly important when Trump got his gift of ships being allowed through the Strait of Hormuz. There is somebody in Iran who, God knows who, there is somebody in Iran who gets to decide we let ships through the Strait of Hormuz, and that's the person who the United States is negotiating with. And that's the person. You are absolutely correct. Like, if Iran is constantly attacking, apparently we've gone through 25% of our missile defense so far. If Iran is maintaining, how much are you going to keep mowing the lawn in Iran to keep the missiles down? It's not long-term feasible. But is there someone in Iran who decided to let the ships through in order to show that they can actually,
deliver?
Yeah.
So your perception is that it would be one-sided publicly, but behind the scenes there would be an agreement with someone who can get the level of conflict down. That's what you think is happening.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what happened in the 12-day war, isn't it?
I mean, I think that we know who that was. That was the supreme leader. I think he was in charge. Yeah, for sure. Now we're not so sure, and I'm not, like, maybe that's true about, like, the ships. To me, the country is in such a chaotic state. I mean, I don't know about Iran, but having been through what they've been through, having, like, with the IRGC the way it is, and the different, like, institutions of state basically at odds with each other, I'm skeptical. Like, even if that person managed to do that, I don't know whether that means they can deliver full time, because I would assume the IRGC whether by their apocalyptic worldviews or by their like lack of understanding like of the macro situation, they might say like, whatever this guy thinks, like, let's assassinate him and do like what we want, which is we must continue resistance. And I think it would be a very significant achievement for someone in that mindset to sort of drag America back into the war. Like if America says mission accomplished, there is such a huge incentive for, even disparate parts of the IRGC with access to the arms, like to the missiles and drones, to just fire more. Like we see it even like in much, like we see it clearly in much less organized places like Gaza, Lebanon, right? Even if Hamas wants a ceasefire, the Islamic Jihad might still shoot, and then you have to sort of work at it for a while until it really stops. And I'm saying, with how the country has been like decentralized for their defense, I think the infrastructure for something similar is there.
I think ultimately the IRGC is not as ideologically wedded to the view. They're not as revolutionary as I mean, it's possible that some are. I don't know who's running the IRGC. I can tell you that the IRGC is very corrupt. I mean, and they, in a very real sense, a lot of them are, they're the ones who decided Ali Khamenei gets to be the next Ayatollah, despite the fact he wasn't qualified to be the supreme leader 30 years ago, right? And they're the ones who decided that Mujtaba gets to be the Ayatollah now, despite the fact that he may be in a coma, and apparently his father quite clearly said it shouldn't be hereditary, because ideologically the idea of like an inherited, like this is the fact Mujtaba became the next Ayatollah is itself a sort of humiliation of the Islamic regime. And
I think one thing that Karim Sajipur said about it that I think, I mean, I agree generally, but he said also, because of having all of his family killed, they have a bit of a save there, saying like he's a living martyr, right? And that's sort of their excuse for why it's not exactly hereditary, but look at how much he's holding up the this flag.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're going to say, and they're going to say what they're going to say. But when it comes down to it, I mean, it's possible. I don't know, but I think just as the 12-day war did end, and I think this might end as well. The question, I think, what they're actually discussing in these negotiations is, are you going to give up the uranium or give up Abu Musa? That's what it seems to me, but I don't know.
I hope it will, and I really hope you're right. As like, there's always this phrase like, I hope I'm wrong when I say something like apocalyptic. I would say this in this situation. It's like I'm clinging to the hope that I'm wrong. Like I really, I'm listening to people that I typically don't listen to, and I'm like, I really hope they're right. Or
what do you think is going to happen?
I think at the moment that the campaign is going to continue. I don't know like whether it's an escalation and to what degree. Like I don't think there's going to be a deal by 8 p.m. Eastern time. And going forward, I think the situation is going to get more chaotic and less clear, which means there's going to be a real difficulty for both America and Israel to finish this war. And I hope I'm wrong. Like I just think it's hard. It's easy to know how you get into war. It's really hard to know how you get out of it. And I don't see, from my limited perspective, something that seems promising in that regard. And
Okay.
I think Yoav disagrees with me, and I'd be happy to hear what you have to say, and to hope that you're right and I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I'll before I let Yoav say it. I think a key thing to be paying attention to is actually the UN Security Council and what's been going on there. And very few people have been talking about it. And I wonder if you've actually been including that in your calculus.
I haven't, but that's a good point. Go ahead, Yoav.
First, I want to highlight John God's comment. He was quoting Donald Trump saying, "A whole civilization will die tonight." And as much as I'm really avid dyed-in-the-wood supporter of Trump, I have no idea. This is causing me goosebumps. And I think he has an idea. He has a plan. So, and it's only a few days to wait and see the plans. Could be a big surprise. As to the dispute between Gilad and Yoav, the basic difference in mindset between the left and the right in Israel is the right would say, okay, so there is no exit strategy. We just go on and try to blow make our blows more painful to them as their blows are to us, and just stubbornly go on. I think the true right, the exit strategy is that you don't seek an exit strategy, and you just think that eventually, over the very long run, they will give up before you do.
I want to address the Donald Trump thing and dispel some internet ideas. Regardless of what Donald Trump himself wants and may in fact command, the United States military is very clear in terms of UCMJ, University Code of Military Justice, and international law. And despite all the stupid things that everyone says, any command that is actually a war crime will not be carried out. He can command it from the private to the lieutenant, to the sergeant, to the lieutenant, to the colonel, to the general, to the, frankly, even Pete Hegseth. Ultimately, I think he thinks of himself as a Christian. And so, like, people who are having dreams of Tehran being turned into glass, right? Atomic bombs, whatever. that there are not going to be actual war crimes committed. Now, is bombing power plants a war crime? Dual use. Everybody's always bombed large manufacturing things that enable manufacturing, and yeah, I mean, bombing Iran back to the Stone Age is a real threat that could be done, but that's going to look like, oh, we don't have electricity, right? And is there an element of collective punishment in there? Yeah, guess what? All wars have an element of collective punishment, because all countries have an element of the civilian. Like if the civilians really hate you, there would be an insurgency, right? And inspiring insurgency is not beyond what people do in wars. So what is the maximalist Trump decides I am going to bring down the full force of the US military on Iran possibility? You're looking at actually but before you do that, you would take Harg Island. Before you would spend all of those bombs, just take Harg Island. And that's why the serious people that we're talking about, the crazy scenario, and I do think they are, I mean, they realize they are talking on the outer edge. They're saying, what's the worst thing? What is the most militaristic thing that the United States might try? I think the most militaristic thing does seem to be trying to get the uranium out by ourselves. But also you have to kind of wonder, okay, what does that accomplish? It humiliation
for sure.
It's absolute humiliation.
I mean, if you take on, like, in the fantasy world in which the U.S. takes out all of the enriched uranium, I think like that is the last remnant of this, whole decades worth of nuclear program, and to say like you have now like actually nothing to show for it. I understand why that would be a very important symbolic victory, and I don't mean symbolic in the sense that it's empty. I think it would be like a narrative that the U.S. would certainly like to hold, especially in terms of like non-proliferation, right? To say like, not only do we shut down the program, we're also going to take any gains that you've made from it, and you're much worse off for ever having started it. That's something that certainly the U.S. would want to do. And I do understand, I hear a lot of people talking about that specific thing about what would this cause for proliferation. Is it going to make more people want the bomb or less people want the bomb? And I think that really depends how this ends rather than what's only happened so far.
And I don't think anything's been worse for proliferation than us allowing Russia to take pieces of Ukraine, despite our supposed guarantees that if they give up. Yeah,
absolutely agree. Like that is the nail in the coffin type of thing, where you say like, you would literally promise the country like, you give up your nukes, we'll have your back because non-proliferation is so important to us, and then yes, oh, now you don't have nukes, so why don't we just invade you? Yeah.
Well, it's one of many nails in the coffin of a completely dead old world order.
Guy, you have something to say?
I think that the old world order has its little living bits. I It's very interesting. Before this, I was watching another YouTube video, surprisingly, about the reforestation of Scotland. And basically, all you have to do is stop the deer for 2 years, 3 years, and you have a forest instead of a wild moor. I think that the world order has potential to re-establish itself, but I think that America needs to want it to a certain extent, or at least be neutral to it. And I think the real problem is that the Chinese have no interest in it, because a world order actually says you can't occupy the South China Seas, and you must have sort of reciprocal agreements with people that make sense, and that you must join the world order about debt to the third world, which they're definitely not going to do, because they hold, when countries go broke, they hold their debt higher value than Western debt underneath. Yeah. So I don't think the world order, it has a potential, but it's not completely dead. But it's not easy to revive either. We'll also see what happens in Hungary on Sunday, because that's also very important.
See what?
Hungary
What's going on
Sunday? The election.
Oh,
Orban, yeah.
Orban may not be Orban afterwards, as we knew him before.
Isn't it crazy how, I mean, to me, when I look at the way that Trump and Vance responded to Mamdani in New York, and now how they're responding to Orban, with this, massive endorsements, and they go and have like shared press conferences with this president of Hungary, and I'm like, I don't think you're doing him a service. Like if I were like on the fence in Hungary, and I saw like this massive hug by America, by Trump and Vance, it's like, that does not project strength or confidence from him in his ability to win that election.
The only way he's not toast is if he cheats and presses the red button.
I wouldn't put it past him.
Oh, he's definitely got his fingers on it. Yeah.
I don't know about the polling. I don't know. I have not been following the situation at all. I will say that I think both Trump and Vance recognize that the people who care, who even know the word Orban, are a very small slice. And this is just part and parcel of retail politics in the United States, where for the people who care about Orban, you say the things that your people who might vote for you care, right?
So you're saying it's retail in the sense of some Orban supporters in the U.S. I thought you meant it like in terms of like the Orban somehow is, giving them something for it or something.
No,
So
it's U.S. electoral politics, and the people. For example, I'm guessing the Claremont Institute people, which it's a certain clique of intelligentsia in the United States who really likes Orban, right? Which has been an integral but small part of contributing financially to the Trump campaign in legal ways, completely. Like, I'm not talking about corruption. I'm talking about retail politics. This is how you win elections in the United States, in a very similar way as in Israel. You say the things that certain small parties want in order to get them into your coalition. The Republicans also have small coalitions. I mean, there are coalitions of party pieces in the Republican.
What you're trying to say is that people are people.
Yes.
I see what you're trying to get at.
Yes.
here's $500,000 for your campaign, but I do like Viktor Orban.
Yeah.
The importance of Orban
Mm.
for the States and for Europe is that he is the great naysayer. So he holds a veto card for almost everything inside the EU.
Mm.
So he's stopped a lot of the stuff going to Ukraine that the EU would love to have given. He's prevented all sorts of other things going on and about same-sex marriage, all sorts of things within the EU because he's got a veto. What is important to MAGA about that is that they are determined to keep Europe weak if they can. The whole Trump thing about despising NATO, despising Europe, there's an element of keeping Europe weak rather than being the third party.
Completely
And supports that process. Whether
I
it be intentional or unintentional, that's what seems to be happening.
That mega base knows too much about Europe.
No, they don't.
No.
it's not. But the
No,
top guys.
the top guys very much care about Europe. They very much care about a strong Europe, and they view Europe as being a lot stronger now that Trump has forced them to take financial responsibility, to stop buying things from Russia, to actually step up, right? And the intent is 100% to see a stronger Europe because they are people who care about Europe. I would say it's very similar to what happens with the Democrats in the United States, who care very much about Israeli politics and want to see, Bibi gone from Israeli politics at any cost because they believe Israel is weaker with Bibi, right? So you can say that they're wrong. Frankly, I don't believe that they are wrong. Because I generally agree with the people in MAGA who believe that NATO has basically been an excuse for Europe to be weak as opposed to something that is keeping Europe strong. I think Rick Grenell, when he was ambassador to Germany, was 100% right. And if you want to know who the Viktor Orban person kind of sort of is, because it's not aligned 100% Rick Grenell and the Claremont Institute types, but that's the inner Republican politics here in the United States, which is what do we want for Europe? They definitely want a strong Europe, but they very much believe that Viktor Orban and whatever her name is in Italy, I forget her name, Meloni, Giorgia Meloni, are the ones who make better decisions for Europe than certainly Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron.
What I'd like to ask you, Guy, about Europe or the UK specifically. How would you say, like, the sentiment in, like, I don't know, on the street or in your circles and generally about the situation with Iran in terms of because the way I see it, like, Europe was basically like uninvolved, or trying to put itself as uninvolved. It has been similar, like, to the Gulf states that did not attack Iran and Iran attacked them. Iran is trying to hold the oil from reaching European countries and to basically choke Europe in order to spite the US and Israel for attacking them. Like, and the response from Europe seems to be, regardless of like the your opinion about the war. Like when someone drags you in and says like someone did something to us, so we're going to screw you over. My sense is that Europe is responding in a way that would appear really weak to at least the more militant parts, the more militant people. Like, is that a sentiment that you see? People are like, why aren't we like fighting back more, projecting power, making it so we don't get threatened so easily, or is Europe mostly like, oh, war is bad. Why are these crazy Americans causing all this havoc for us?
Yeah, why are all these crazy Americans causing havoc for us? That's a good question. Let's not answer that. Ask that one. No, but it's the feeling is, hey, US, you created this problem, you sort it out. Perun, who's a very good analyst, said it probably would take 100 odd frigates to protect the Straits of Hormuz against an enthusiastic Iran, to get people moving through and defending ships as they went back and forth. The US doesn't have that capability. The US actually has a real problem that they can't seem to build smaller warships at the moment at all. They're quite short of those sort of things, and they're not building any of them at the moment either. They haven't actually got any plans to build enough. So that's a problem for the US, that they don't have the frigates they need to actually keep the Straits of Hormuz open. The Europeans do have the ability to provide some of those frigates, although actually, to be honest, the Royal Navy is down to about 3 or 4, I think, at the moment that are functioning. And,
yeah, I've heard that the Royal Navy or generally the Royal military has become really irrelevant. Or I don't know if it's true, but I've heard this.
We have had so many cuts over such a long period that we can't actually.
Because like to me, it's kind of historically, it's interesting. It's about the world order you were talking about. I mean, the maritime world order, like the new world order is British a lot more than it's American, right? Like the whole idea of like maritime empires that thrive on trade rather than just masses of land is the UK model. And to me, like that seems like something that the UK is certainly not willing to enforce nowadays as it was in the past without having a navy to actually enforce that.
Well, the World War II consensus was, okay, the United States is going to be world police. And that's what's falling apart, is because we don't want to be believe it. What?
Suez made us believe it.
The Suez Canal?
Yeah, we invaded the Suez Canal in 1956 with the Israelis, and the Americans basically chopped us off at the knees.
Yeah. And
look, the French.
This is part of why the United States is saying, look, NATO, like you're punching at the exact point, right? England is like, hey, United States, it is your job to keep the Strait of Hormuz open for our oil. And the United States is like, why is that my job? That is what Trump is saying.
You asked for it. We tried, and you told us to go away.
Hold on, no.
I think like historically
level. Are you? Yeah. At what level are you talking about that? Like it's 70 years ago?
Yeah.
New generation.
Yeah. Well, I think not just 70 years ago. NATO is generally is built up and was like definitely like NATO is American led for sure, right? Like America calls the shots in NATO throughout the years, and the force structure has been built to carry out missions led by America, right? Like the way for
yes, but this is what J.D. Vance said at the Munich Security Conference. And this is what MAGA believes, and they sincerely believe it. That what happened was the United States was taking over a larger and larger share, and the other NATO countries were not, and they weren't. They were not paying their fair share.
The data is clear about that. Like most European countries up until 2022 were, I think, paying less than half of what they had legally committed to pay to NATO. Like that's not debatable, right? Like that's just the data.
And that's what MAGA is like. No, we're that's not acceptable.
Sure, I'm just saying like there's that's what I was trying to sort of understand, because I think regardless of different regimes right now and the MAGA idea and everything, I'm just saying like historically the way that this process was carried out, right, is I think somewhat like Guy is saying, right? Countries wanted to have their own power in addition to this to NATO's alliance. The U.S. said basically, no, this is inconvenient, right? We want to have control of when and why and how we start, wars and things like that. And then, well, the politics in the EU sort of aligned to that, saying like, well, basically, it's not expedient politically to, pay our fair share to NATO. It just doesn't pay off. It doesn't necessarily serve our own interests, like with Suez, and America is going to carry it through anyways. So it just made a lot of short-term sense for the EU to go the way it went.
The European allies, I think, is the right phrase rather than the EU, but yeah, because
right.
people like Norway
are
not actually in the EU.
Okay, now that we've solved all of the world's problems.
I've enjoyed it. Have you enjoyed it?
No, this was a great discussion. Or it's unfortunately it's rare to talk to people who actually have some grasp of reality in when discussing things like this.
Yeah, we all need to go and read about uranium hexafluoride again.
Yep. And Artemis 2 is more important than people think, I think. But there we go.
And beautiful pictures.
Lovely pictures.
Yep. Okay. Is there anything else we want to discuss? Any final words, Gilad?
Hoping for the best. I'm guessing I'm not going to have a lot of sleep tonight, regardless of what happens when this ultimatum expires. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be like 3 a.m. your time, something like that.
When the ultimatum expires, and then that's not necessarily the hour where the missile alarms start blaring, but we'll see.
Guy, last words.
Yeah, Yoav, God bless you tonight, and hopefully they don't do anything too silly.
Gilad is also in Israel.
Yes.
Yeah. Kirk, final words.
Remember to go to church and synagogue on weekends.
It is still Pesach. Yoav.
Well, first I will sleep very well tonight, even between alarms, because I have confidence. I'm not worried at all. That's just me. Second, I want to thank you for not stopping every 5 minutes and asking, hey, Yoav, what are you thinking about this issue? You were just neglecting me. And that was good, because if I started to speak about the issue you were discussing, well, I did not come to the TLC to argue with people.
Okay.
And to also, I was when I was younger, I was inside the nuclear reactor. I visited the nuclear reactor. And one of my friends stole a bit of radioactive material. And when we had our checkup, exiting the premises, they found it. Turned out it was in his pocket for a week. Wow. I don't know what happened to him.
Oh wow. Well, as far as asking your opinion, Yoav, you have access to my channel, so you can broadcast your opinion as much as you like. Please do. I always like hearing from you. And I'm guessing I probably agree with you a lot more than I agree with Guy and Gilad. But I have been trying to get other voices on here because I do believe it's necessary to have broad discussions and understand things but at the same time, unfortunately, too many people think that any opinion, like you open it up. I mean, I don't know if you guys have been watching when I've been going on Chaos and CT and Conflux, but yeah, while it's fun, it's not as much fun as having these real discussions. So I will leave you with the poem from Nasser Khosrow, which ends, "It is from us that it is upon us." It's the story of an eagle who was flying and was hit by a arrow, and it looked at the arrow as it was falling and saw that it was fletched with feathers, and it said, "It is from us that is upon us."
سر سنگ عقابی به هوا خواست، آن در طلب تو مهپر و بال بیاراست، بر راستی بال نظر کرد و چنین گفت امروز همه روی جهان زیر پر ماست، بر بال عقاب آمد آن تیر جگردوز، عذب مرو را به سوی خاک فرو کاست، چون نیک نگاه کرد و پر خویش برو دید، گفت تازه که نالیم که از ماست که بر ماست، از ماست که بر ماست، از ماست که